China taking over the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council comes at a time when the council is at an impasse. The world is watching closely, hoping for a resolution that will bring an end to the violence, provide relief to the suffering civilians, and pave the way for a sustainable peace in the region. And the United Nations, especially those agencies working on the ground in Gaza, say the clock is ticking and have pleaded with the Security Council to take action.
I implore the Security Council to immediately adopt a resolution that reminds parties of their obligations under international law.
I urge all member states to change the trajectory of this crisis and work towards a genuine political solution before it's too late.
The Security Council has repeatedly tried to address the Israel-Hamas conflict through resolutions and debate. However, it has found itself deadlocked in a complex web of international politics and differing perspectives.
I would be very surprised if there is a break in the impasse, primarily because we have seen this again in the past, and there has been a very clear pattern that permanent members tend to shield the actions of their allies through a veto. We saw this in the case of Syria, and now we're seeing it in the case of Israel. Unless there is a consensus on the prioritizing of humanitarian cooperation, freeing the hostages, and ceasefire, I'm afraid there is likely to be a continuation of this impasse for the foreseeable future.
As China assumes the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council in November, its permanent representative here in New York is very clear about his country's position, a position that can hopefully break the impasse.
We believe that so long as we focus on the most pressing issues at hand, such as a ceasefire and an end to the fighting, the protection of civilians and the prevention of a larger humanitarian disaster, it is not impossible for the members of this council to reach a consensus. Silence means acquiesce, and inaction is tantamount to a green light. The eyes of the world are upon us, and history will record our choice.
And while the Israel-Hamas conflict is not the only pressing issue around the horseshoe table in the Security Council chamber, it is most certainly one that will be all-consuming for the Council in the month of November. But we cannot forget there's still conflict in Ukraine, ongoing violence in Haiti, and several UN peace missions across Africa that still needs the Council's attention. China last held the 15-member rotating presidency in August 2022. At the time, China said that the United Nations Security Council should fulfill its due responsibilities. And now, as it takes over in the midst of the Gaza conflict, it hopes its calls for dialogue and cooperation will move things forward, especially on the issue of the Middle East. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.